Political violence, social unrest, madness, and mayhem. You may think this is describing a far-off place, but this is actually describing the political context of America today. Recently, we have seen a rise in political violence, with events such as January 6th, where a Republican mob thought it was best to storm the Capitol building, where one person was shot and one person was even trampled by the crowd. Since January 6th, we have seen 213 reported cases of political violence. We can also see this when a whole zone was taken over called Chaz, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, where no government access was allowed for a very long period of time, meaning no police services or medical services whatsoever. We can even see poll workers are harassed and even receive death threats, or even Michigan's governor was the target of a kidnapping plot. This is all a result of a rise in political polarization. Today, we have two parties, and running as anything other than Republican or Democrat is a death sentence to one's political standing. We can actually see in Federalist 10, we were intended to have multiple parties in order to represent the vast variety of perspectives within our country, and also create a check to keep one party from becoming too large or too powerful. But we've done exactly what our founders were afraid of. We've limited ourselves to two parties who are unwilling to compromise, when that's what democracy is all about, compromise for the better of everyone. And in turn, our system operates in a way that pits groups against each other. The first contributing factor that we have is that we have parties within our country, which is healthy for our democracy and necessary for representing the vast variety of people that we have in our country. But what we see today is that politicians push these groups against each other and rather highlight the differences than highlight the similarities between the groups. And in turn, they tell us that compromise is a bad thing, and that compromise is a bad thing, and that to compromise with the other side is losing a battle in the political world. We recently saw that we came very close to compromise with the border bill until Trump came in and said that the bill was stupid and that Republicans shouldn't give Biden the win. But instead, we should have seen this almost compromise as a good thing. It would have shown that our democracy is operating as it is supposed to. But instead, we were told that compromise is bad. We must understand that when groups go unheard, that is when they become their most desperate, and that is where we see a rise in polarization and the rise in political violence that we have today. We must also realize that our parties are becoming more and more extreme, and this is because we have one central view in each party, which no one is willing to challenge, which is because of a lack of ideological diversity. And this has also led to the parties characterizing each other as the enemy by exaggerating this one extreme, which is why we get headlines like these, calling Republicans racist or homophobic, and Democrats are called woke and unpatriotic. This is how politicians are able to control their constituents so well, by painting the other side as a common enemy that we must unite against in one radical extreme in order to keep them from corrupting the country. But we must be able to see past all of this. We must realize that we have a lot more in common with each other than we are led to believe. That not everyone is this one extreme that we see on the news and in the media every day. We must realize that even if somebody does think differently than us, that a different perspective is not a bad thing. It means that we are more informed and that we can make the right change within our country. We must also realize that we are manipulated in ways that we don't even realize with the internet and especially social media, where during campaign season you can see the regular campaign ads and even videos of people sharing their opinions on the election and the candidates who are running for office. But we can also see how social media and the internet is used to spread the exaggerated idea that the other side is the enemy and is exaggerated extreme, with posts such as these, once again calling Republicans racist and homophobic, or even Nazis. Or we can see Democrats are called once again woke or unpatriotic or even corrupt. We can even see politicians use this themselves to push the narrative that the other side is the enemy. Well, once again, we must be able to see past all of this and realize that this exaggerated extreme that we see pushed in the media today is not who every member of a party is. Along with parties and the lack of ideological diversity within them, and the internet and especially social media, we are seeing a rise in political polarization, and in turn of political violence. We even see a lack of true representation within our country of what the people actually want. But there is still hope. Politicians such as Tim Kaine, a Democrat, and Susan Collins, a Republican, or more moderate politicians who are attempting to bridge the gap by hearing the other side and being more open to compromise themselves. We ourselves must also be willing to do the same. We must be more open-minded and be open to hearing the other side, and also be willing to compromise ourselves. There's also hope on our campus. Recently, you might have filled out a Google survey in your social studies classes, and the whole purpose of that was to show that we have more in common than we actually believe. 88% of you said that you are open-minded, and 91% of you said that you would not end any sort of relationship because of political beliefs. The last thing that we must do is we must create environments that make a necessity for politicians to be more moderate and open to compromise in order to be elected. And I leave you with this. The other side is not the enemy, but just merely a different perspective.